Hi, folks. Well, before going any further on my build of the Tamiya 1/48 scale P-38 Lightning, I wanted to talk a bit more in detail about the pilot of that historical aircraft, Miss Virginia. His name was Rex T. Barber. And what I'm going to be reading here is an edited version of the Wikipedia entry. Rex was born May 6, 1917, in Culver, Oregon. He was a student at Linfield College and then Oregon State College, now Oregon State University, from 1937 to 1940, before enlisting in the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1940. Barber received his officer commission in his pilot wings in October 1941. He joined the 7th Pursuit Squadron, which arrived at Guadalcanal in December 1942. Flying a Bell P-39 era Cobra, he scored his first victory, downing a Japanese bomber that month. Upon transferring to the 339th Squadron, he began flying P-38 Lightnings and claimed 2 Zero fighters on April 7, 1943. On April 18th, Lieutenant Barber figured prominently in the interception of Admiral Yamamoto, also known as Operation Vengeance. Intelligence sources had learned that Yamamoto would be flying in a Betty bomber on a tour of Japanese bases in the northern Solomon Islands. Historian Donald Bourgeois credits Barber with the sole kill of Yamamoto's aircraft. In 1991, Barber and Captain Thomas George Lampier Jr. were officially credited each with a half kill in Yamamoto's bomber after the Air Force reviewed the incident. Barber also shared a second Betty destroyed on the same mission. In 2003, Barber was credited by the governor and legislature of Oregon with the sole kill after an inspection analyzed the crash site and determined that the path of the bullet impacts validated Barber's account and invalidated Lampier's claim. Despite numerous appeals, the U.S. Air Force refused to reverse its 1991 ruling. Military historian Daniel Hallman, who was a member of the U.S. Air Force panel that had reviewed the case in 1985, stated in 2024 that after reviewing new evidence, quote, "I have become convinced that despite the panel decision and subsequent Rice decision, credit for shooting down Yamamoto's plane goes to Rex Barber," unquote. After his tour of duty ended in June 1943, then Captain Barber requested a return to combat. Later that year, he joined the 449th Fighter Squadron in China, flying P-38s. He claimed 3 further Japanese planes, but he was shot down on his 139th mission, bailing out near Guangqing, China, on April 29th. He was rescued by Chinese civilians who treated his injuries and escorted him to safety 5 weeks later. At the end of the war, Barber had attained the rank of major. He transferred to the newly established U.S. Air Force in 1947. He commanded one of America's first jet fighter squadrons. Barber retired from the Air Force as a full colonel in 1961. His Navy Cross citation reads as follows: "The President of the United States of America takes pleasure in presenting the Navy Cross to First Lieutenant Rex Theodore Barber, United States Army Air Forces, for extraordinary heroism while serving as a pilot of a P-38 fighter airplane in the 339th Fighter Squadron, 37th Fighter Group, 13th Air Force, U.S. Army Air Forces, attached to a Marine Fighter Command in action against enemy Japanese forces in the Solomon Islands on 18th of April, 1943. Participating in a dangerously long interception flight, First Lieutenant Barber contacted a formation of 2 enemy bombers escorted by 6 fighters in a complete surprise approach. Quickly engaging the enemy, he pressed his tactical advantage and struck fiercely, destroying 1 Japanese bomber at such close range that fragments from the explosion lodged in the wings of his plane. and shooting down the escorting enemy fighter plane, which had been attempting to divert the attack. Actually, the Japanese lost no zeros that day, but both Betty bombers in that flight were shot down. Barber's brilliant airmanship and determined fighting spirit throughout a daring and vital mission were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Armed Services. In addition to the Navy Cross, Barber received numerous commendations and citations over his career, including the Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Purple Heart, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, the Korean Service Medal, the China War Memorial Medal, the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, the United Nations Korea Medal, and the Korean War Service Medal. After his retirement from the military, Barber returned to Culver, Oregon, and resided there for the next 40 years. He worked as an insurance agent, and at different times, he served the city of Culver as mayor and judge. He was a strong supporter of Little League Baseball, a father, a grandfather, and often helped out local youth. He was actively involved in service organizations until his death at his home in Terrebonne, Oregon. His son, Rex Jr., was quoted that his, quote, afterburner just flamed out on him. Rex passed away on July 26, 2001, at the age of 84. Quite a pilot, quite a hero. So, as noted in that brief biography which I read, Rex Barber was Oregon born and raised, and he returned to Oregon after his military career ended. Now, the small town of Culver is only 20 miles from where I live, and the small town or hamlet of Terrebonne is only about 6 miles from my home here in Redmond. And I recently learned, in fact, I learned it as I began this project to build Miss Virginia, that Rex Barber and his wife are buried in the Redmond Memorial Cemetery, a 5-minute drive from my home. So this morning, my friend Rick and I paid a visit to Rex Barber's grave. Well, here's the resting place of Rex T. Barber, Colonel, U.S. Air Force, retired. He was a lieutenant at the time of Operation Vengeance when he shot down Yamamoto's plane. And he's buried at the Redmond Memorial Cemetery, only about 2.5 miles from my house. What a coincidence. Thank you for your service, Colonel Barber.